Welcome back to the show, everyone. Of course, we were just speaking with Paul Plakis, the host of X-Weighted, and now we're going to move on to something slightly related to that.
Because November is Diabetes Awareness Month, and here to demystify diabetes is Dr. Heidi Rootes. She is a naturopathic physician. How are you, Dr. Heidi?
Heidi,
Thank you.
how are things?
Good.
Okay, let's talk about this in terms of different diabetes, because I hear type 1, type 2. I mean, how many different kinds?
There's lots of different types of diabetes. I was just going to give you a few really interesting stats that I found on diabetes. In Canada, there are 2 million diabetics, and by next year, 2010, they're expected to be 3 million diabetics.
Why such the increase?
90% of those are type 2 diabetics, so it's lifestyle, diet.
That's crazy. Our population is like 32, 33 million, so that's 10%
of the population. By 2025, 380 million diabetics worldwide.
Really?
Yeah. Interesting. In the next 24 hours, expected 2,200 people will be diagnosed with diabetes. Over 500 diabetics will die. Over 66 are expected to go blind, and 153 diabetic-related amputations in 24 hours.
Is crazy.
Okay, so it is
It's
a serious
problem.
thing to pay attention to.
It
So let's
is.
differentiate between type 1 and type 2 diabetes. What is the difference?
Okay, so type 1 diabetes is typically pediatric to young adults. It's an autoimmune condition where in diagnosis you are insulin dependent.
Okay.
So it's your immune system is attacking your pancreas makes insulin, so you're no longer making insulin, your blood sugars are out of control, so your glucose is out of control. Usually you're diagnosed because you go into a diabetic coma.
Yeah, so obviously there are things that a naturopath can help out in terms of diet and things like that, but this is an insulin-based.
It is insulin-based, and it's an autoimmune condition. So some really interesting things that are being discovered about type 1 diabetics are low vitamin D levels and a low essential fatty acid. There's definitely a genetic component to it as well, but infants that have low vitamin D and low essential fatty acids, fish oils basically, are at a higher risk.
At a higher risk,
Yeah.
interesting.
Wow.
Okay, and then type 2,
Type 2 diabetes
is the one that's really exponentially growing.
Right, so this is 90 to 95% of all diabetics are type 2. It used to be called adult onset diabetes, which is no longer the case. 20 years ago, there was no cases of pediatric type 2 diabetes, and now there are so many cases, it's almost epidemic.
Why?
It's
just diet?
Such poor diet, we're creating insulin resistance. So what happens is when you're eating poorly, you're not exercising, your glucose levels in the body are so high that the cells no longer respond to the insulin. It's like when someone's constantly nagging at you, you just start to tune them out.
Right.
So the insulin's no longer being received by the cells, and so the cells are no longer opening up to the glucose, so the glucose stays in the blood for long periods of time, causing extraordinary damage to the rest of the body.
Okay, obviously when somebody needs insulin, they should do that route. But there are naturopathic routes that you can take as far as type 2 goes. Maybe you can tell us what a naturopath can do if you are diabetic.
Well, depending on the person. So there's some people that absolutely need insulin or medications, and it's not, the naturopathic route isn't necessarily get you off all your meds, and we work with where you are at in your diabetes and help your body respond better to either your insulin or your medications, or at some point if you don't need medications and you can just maintain your glucose levels with diet and exercise. But very, very important, number one is diet. So eating the right foods frequently and in small doses, and exercise, extremely important.
I was going to ask whether type 2 is reversible. I would assume that with some people maybe, but
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot of type 2 diabetics that are controlling their diabetes with diet and lifestyle, and they are on absolutely no medications. But you have to get everything under control for a while.
Right, there's a dedication involved in that.
Absolutely, yeah, it takes some time, but it's a great place to be, and you can't not be diabetic anymore.
Are there other types of diabetes, or is it just type 1
Well, there's
type 2?
gestational diabetes as well. Between 5 and 10% of all pregnant women develop gestational diabetes.
I've heard about this, from my wife being pregnant a couple times. It was something they talked about. She
Right,
wasn't.
Yeah, the interesting thing about gestational diabetes is 40% of women who develop gestational diabetes go on to develop type 2 diabetes within 12 years.
Really?
Really.
And once again, is that diet-based?
A lot of times it's diet-based, and you've thrown your blood sugars off, and a lot of it has to do, again, with stress and your cortisol levels. So the higher your cortisol levels, the more unstable your blood sugars are, and that predisposes you more to the metabolic syndrome, where you have the abdominal weight gain, you have high blood pressure, high cholesterol levels, your insulin resistance, which is the big thing.
Right. Okay, we keep talking about diet.
Right.
What are people doing wrong to create this epidemic?
They're eating fast foods, high carbohydrates, high sugar. They're eating a sugar load at breakfast, and they're not eating again for another 5 or 6 hours. Or they're not eating breakfast, they're having that morning coffee with cream in it, and then they don't eat till lunch.
Yeah.
And so their blood sugars are just complete, they spike. They're up, and their insulin spikes, and then everything drops.
Is there a sort of, I guess, people not understanding the way that their body uses certain foods? I mean, you hear about
so.
different things, and really your body recognizes it as sugar, right?
Absolutely.
So acts appropriately. So is that part of it? Is that people think, well, this doesn't have a lot of sugar in it, but really your body recognizes it as...
It's not sugar, it's bread, but it translates into the blood as sugar. And it's also how your body responds to that. Everything translates into glucose in the blood. But you can have a high carbohydrate intake, and it goes into sugar quickly into the blood, whereas if you have a high protein intake, you're gonna elevate your glucose levels very slowly. Your insulin levels are gonna come up very slowly, and you're gonna have less insulin resistance. So it's all about what you're eating, when you're taking your foods in. So ideally, we'd go back to being grazers. We'd eat a moderate level of carbohydrates, and you want complex carbohydrates, vegetables, whole grains, things that don't spike your blood sugar levels.
And you want to eat small meals frequently instead of just
frequent meals.
eating one meal a day and stuffing your face like people are prone to do.
So other things that are really interesting is there's huge links between type 1 diabetes, and there's another type of diabetes actually that's coming out now. It's called type 1.5 or LADA, which is latent autoimmune diabetes of the adult. And it's a type 1 diabetes that basically happens after 30 years.
Wow.
Because it's just triggered by...
Because your body starts to attack itself because of the abuse. Basically.
Well, if that
Good
isn't a wake-up
times.
call, people, I don't know what is. Thank you so much, Dr. Heidi.
pleasure.
Of course, you can go to Dr. Heidi's website to get in touch with her if you want to pursue naturopathic treatment and see your doctor if you want to go that route as well.
I eat like a forager.
Yep.
Just all day.
Yeah, you do.
Like a squirrel.
And actually...
He actually eats like that.
Like I actually eat like that. Crackers. It just makes me happy.
Not
Try and do
crackers.
that and not smile.
Crackers bad.
Not
Crackers sugar.
Almonds. Like a squirrel.
He's been chastised again. We're going to take a quick break.